Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I thought I'd do a short video today just talking about a mistake a lot of people make who are new to permaculture, the concept of it. They've maybe watched a couple videos and they've latched onto a couple principles and they really haven't looked much further than that. And they're running on some assumptions that are inherently flawed. Now, what I'm doing right now in my garden is pulling the garlic-scapes off my garlic. These are hardneck garlic. They grow, and at some point while they're growing, they send out one of these things called a garlic-scape. And it makes a thing that's like a flower but isn't a flower, called a bulbil. It's not a flower because it will never be pollinated. It's going to make little, at the end of this, there's going to be a little thing that looks like a flower but isn't. And it's going to make these little tiny things that look like tiny garlics. So these are clones, okay? And I was just picking, you have to pick them. Once they've made like at least one curl, it's time to pick them. And if you pick them, it will result in a larger garlic bulb at the bottom, because instead of the plant it's gathering energy with its leaves, with its foliage, it's gathering energy with those, and it's either going to put the energy into procreating below the ground or above the ground. The garlic wants to do both. I mean, it doesn't really want to, it's just what it does. Okay, garlic, don't think, right? But the garlic's trying to do everything it can to ensure that there's going to be more of it next year. It's trying to perpetuate its existence. Not because it's making rational choices and deciding to do that. That's just what living things do. Okay, so the flaw, the permaculture flaw, is to think, well, the plants know what to do, nature knows what it wants, and just leave nature alone and everything will work out fine. That's a general principle that, I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but that's a general principle that people who are really enamored with the concept of permaculture latch onto, because it's wonderful. And I mean, we're supposed to model our gardens after a forest. There's a forest behind me. Where no one tends to the forest, there's no gardeners, no one's working on the forest, and the forest is just fine, right? No one needs to water it, no one needs to weed it, no one needs to till it, no one needs to fertilize it, and it just keeps going. And we want a garden that works that way. That's great, and there's a lot we can do to set up a system that works that way for the most part. But the goals of the plant, insofar as plants can have goals, aren't the same thing as our goals as gardener. I want big, fat garlic. Yes, the little ones are just fine, but the big ones are easier to deal with when you're cooking. They're easier to peel, they're, that sort of thing, right? They're just, aside from it's just nice to have big things in your garlic. A larger garlic, there's a certain size where they're easier to deal with in the kitchen, and there's a certain size when they're small where they're sort of tedious and annoying to deal with in the kitchen. And there's all kinds of tricks for peeling garlic and that sort of thing, but if you're like me and you go through I grow 250 garlic each year. 50 of those get set aside for seed, and the rest get used. And I also make a kind of garlic paste, like a pesto, out of these scapes. So it's just, if you're dealing with a lot of garlic, it's easier to peel garlic that have a minimum size. Let's put it that way. Once they get really small, they're irritating to peel and deal with. If you cook a lot, right? If you cook from scratch using, just a knife and a chopping board, that sort of thing, right? It's just easier to deal with garlic of a certain size. So what the plant wants and what you want are at odds. You want big fat garlic. The garlic just wants more of itself next year. And it's going to do it's hedging, right? It's making new garlic. It's taking that one clove and turning it into an entire bulb underground. But it's also going to, if you leave it alone, it's going to make these, it's going to shoot out these scapes. Right? It eventually, see, this is all sort of bent. Eventually this thing will straighten out. And this thing at the end will become this big flower-like thing. Okay? So if you snap them off right at the base like I'm doing right now, you're ensuring that your bulb will be anywhere from 20 to 30% larger in size. Because it's not going to put out another one of these. Once you snap this off, the garlic's done with this, and all the energy that these leaves are able to gather from the sun is going to go into the bulb, into the garlic head, and you're going to get bigger garlic. Okay? So, yes, We love to just leave nature to itself. We love to have a garden where we provide the conditions for nature to take its course and for plants and all the things, all the soil organisms to have the ideal environment. So everything's got ideal conditions to grow. But it's a flaw to think that what the plants want and what you want are the same thing. Sometimes that's the case, like with beans, right? The plant wants to make beans and you want beans, so your goals are aligned, right? But with something like garlic, you have different goals. The garlic just wants to make more garlic. You want big fat garlic, right? It's not going to give you big fat garlic if you leave it alone. You have to take these scapes off. And I'm sure there's going to be a comment saying, I always leave them on, blah, 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 blah. Sure, you can do that, okay? But I can guarantee you, if you take them off before that bulb really starts to form up, right? Before this will get quite large, right? And it makes a kind of, basically it's making seed. Well, what are seeds? Any given seed is an energy source, right? There's everything in that seed. Everything a plant needs to become an entire living thing is in that seed. So a lot of energy is going to be sent to each seed. And one of these bulbils is going to make, I don't know, like 50 seeds, right? One of these can make like 50 garlic. And that's fine if that's what you want, but they're little tiny seeds, and if you plant them, they're going to give you little tiny garlic. If you save those tiny garlic and plant them the next year, they're going to make slightly larger garlic, and eventually you can use those bulbul seeds to make new garlic. You can do all of that. But if you're trying to make the most of the actual garlic you've got, you want big garlic, you don't want to let that happen. You don't let the garlic do what it wants. You sort of insist on the garlic doing what you want. No, don't make bulbils, make heads, right? Make garlic bulbs. We want bulbs, not bulbils, okay? So the whole point is that, and I mean, this would be a very long video if I went through every single example of that sort of thing. But there are some plants where what the plant does is exactly what you want the plant to do. Like a bean, like a tomato, right? To a certain extent. So there's even things you can do to a tomato to make, to encourage the tomato to be more the kind of tomato you want than the kind of tomato the tomato wants. That's called pruning, and it's only for certain varieties, and it's a complicated discussion. I don't want to get into it here. The point is that for any given plant, it may be the case that what the plant wants to do and what you want the plant to do are the same thing. In that case, you put down your mulch, you leave it alone, and everything works out great. But for some things, your goals are at odds, and that's where you intervene with your human mind and hands and insist that the plant do what you want. And the great thing about something like garlic is that by snapping off this scape, I actually get another food source. If you take these off before they get too big and too developed, and once they become larger and more developed, and this thing at the end starts getting larger, they become woody. If you snap them off at the right point in time, usually when they've made one turn like this, then they're very tender, and you can use them in cooking. You can use them just fresh like this in a stir fry, just chop them up in little 1-inch pieces and toss them around and just use them like any other garlic. Or you can put them in a food processor, like I've got 250 of these, right? So I can't use these all up. You put them in a food processor, you know, with a little bit of, I've got videos on how to do this. Put them in a food processor with some oil and some salt and a little bit of lemon juice or vinegar or something like that. And you've got this green paste with a strong garlic taste. And you can just use that in lieu of garlic. So yes, I get about 250 garlic a year. 200 of those go into storage for use later. 50 go back in the ground in the fall. And all of these scapes usually become about 36 250 milliliter, which is about 1 cup, jars of paste. And whenever I want to cook something that uses garlic, which is just about every day, I put 1 or 2 or 3 tablespoons of that paste in. And all you got to do is stick them in the fridge. I got videos on how to do all this, so I'm not going to get into it here. But yeah, my point is that, yes, you know, viewing gardening through the permaculture lens is beautiful, and that's what I do here. But if you're going to do that, I wouldn't stop at watching a couple of videos. I'd sort of do a deep dive and weigh the information you're getting against your common sense and what just seems rational for your goals. And for any given plant like this garlic, just letting things happen is not necessarily the best way to get the most. I mean, you have a garden and you're planting things to grow food, and you're trying to get the most food out of the space you have available to you with the least amount of work and energy. Okay, so, you know, I got a garden here with about 60 garlic in it. It takes about 2 minutes to break off these garlic-scapes, and I'm going to get 20 to 30% larger bulbs as a result of that. That's not a bad investment of 2 minutes time. I got to take these all inside and use my Cuisinart and make them into garlic paste. It takes about an hour or so, but then I've got like 3 months worth of garlic to use in my meals, so that's not a bad use of an hour's time. So yeah, just a little pontification about permaculture and applying the principles and thinking them through, and not necessarily being overly fanatical about your approach, where for some things, yes, you just let everything happen and everything's great, but for other things you do have to intervene and with your human intellect and optimize the outcomes. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here, go to vessies.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year. And use my coupon code GAVS23 to get free shipping as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items in the order. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Vessies. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and they sell something you need, buy it from them using my coupon code, and happy gardening.